Mystery ate a Blind Frog Ranch for years. The Olinger family's annual treasure hunt had been a thrilling tradition. Part game, part history lesson, always ending with laughter and a chest of chocolate coins buried beneath soft Utah soil. Blind Frog Ranch, with its strange reputation and whispering canyons, was the perfect stage for their imagination. But this year was different. This year, something waited beneath the earth that wasn't meant to be found. It began with a map. Not the hand-drawn riddles Trevor Olinger used to make, but a brittle, ink-faded parchment his son Drew discovered while rummaging through a box of old ranch tools. Folded so many times its edges had fused, the map bore odd symbols and lines etched like scars across a faded rendering of the property. Most peculiar of all was a symbol at its center, a circle with a slash through it, unlike any Drew had seen. The adults chuckled when Drew presented it at breakfast. Another layer of legend to Blind Frog Ranch, they said. Probably a leftover from one of the staged hunts Grandpa Carl used to orchestrate before he passed. But Drew wasn't so sure. The paper felt older than Carl's games, its ink faded not by time alone, but by something ancient and sunless. When he held it up to the light, faint lettering appeared, written not in English, but in some looping, angular script that seemed to move if he stared too long. By afternoon, excitement had trumped caution. The Ollingers, Trevor, Leanne, Drew, and his older sister Brenna, donned their hiking boots and slung backpacks over their shoulders. They set out across the ranch's red stone ridges, chasing shadows and laughter into the wilderness. With the sun high and golden, the ranch looked like a canvas of fire and silence. No wind, no bird song. Hours passed as the map led them further from familiar trails. Drew's steps grew slower, his thoughts heavier. The symbols seemed to change the longer they followed them. Lines that had pointed toward a rocky outcrop now suggested a detour into a gnarled cluster of juniper trees. Beneath one such tree, they found the first sign. It was a stone, a polished oval slab half buried in dirt, etched with the same circle/emblem. Beneath it, not treasure, but a hollow cavity that exhaled a breath of cool, fetid air when disturbed. Trevor, ever the adventurer, fetched a flashlight and dropped into the opening. The silence that followed was unnatural thud of boots. No echoes. Just stillness, broken only when Trevor climbed out moments later, pale and tense. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The family felt it. Something was wrong. Still, the hunt continued, more from inertia than will. Each clue they found led them deeper, not just into the ranch's remote zones, but into something colder, quieter. An absence. Birds no longer passed overhead. The sky dulled, as though the sun itself was retreating behind an unseen veil. The last location on the map brought them to a shallow canyon choked with brush and bones. Not animal bones, but those of something unidentifiable. Some larger-than-human creature with twisted limbs and a mouthful of impossibly long teeth. The bones lay half-submerged in a pool of black water that didn't reflect light. No ripple disturbed its surface. No insects buzzed nearby. The map ended here. Trevor stared at the water for a long time, eyes narrowed. Then, as if compelled, he stepped toward it. Leanne grabbed his arm, shook her head. His eyes darted to hers, vacant for a heartbeat. Then he blinked, nodded slowly, and stepped back. That night, they made camp near the canyon, too tired to retrace their steps. The firewood burned low and quiet, flames casting long shadows that never stayed still. Drew tried to sleep but couldn't. Neither could Brenna. They sat outside their tent, watching the fire and pretending not to see the shadows on the rock walls shift in ways they shouldn't. When the wind did come, it came not from the canyon, but from below. A rising draft like a breath, warm and reeking of iron and rot. The fire sputtered. The shadows grew longer. The ground trembled once, then again. They heard something move beneath them. A dragging sound. A pulse. In unspoken agreement, they packed by moonlight and left the canyon behind. But the ranch didn't let go so easily. By morning, they were still within the same canyon, though they'd walked for hours in a straight line away from it. The map had vanished from Drew's pack. Trevor's compass spun aimlessly. Even the GPS on Brenna's phone blinked out, displaying coordinates that made no sense. Lane swore she recognized a rock formation she'd seen the day before, but from the opposite direction. They were caught in a loop. Something had changed. Then came the markings, carved into trees, stone, even the sides of boulders they swore were clean yesterday. The same circle with a slash. Always watching, always near. Once, Drew looked behind a stone outcropping and found spirals, like the thing that made them had clawed them out in a frenzy. Brenna stopped speaking after that. She walked with her eyes downcast, clutching her necklace tight between her fingers. Lane tried to keep morale up, but her voice cracked when she forced cheer. Trevor was the worst, taciturn and distant, like a man trying to hold back something large and terrible behind his teeth. The third night, Drew dreamed of the pool, except this time it was empty. The bones walked. The water reached for him with arms. He woke with dried blood under his nose and his ears ringing like church bells underwater. Something was bleeding through. When they finally escaped the loop, it wasn't because they solved the puzzle. It was because the ranch let them go. The symbols stopped appearing. The compass reset. The air lifted, lighter, breathable again. The canyon behind them crumbled in a slow, silent landslide as they turned away, like a mouth closing. They said nothing of what had happened, not even on the drive back. They left the map behind. They deleted the photos. They told their friends the treasure hunt was fun, but they were thinking of retiring the tradition. Maybe go to the coast next year. Or Canada. But Blind Frog Ranch never forgets. Weeks later, Brenna received a package. No return address. Inside, a rock, smooth and cold, etched with a circle and a slash. For the Olinger family, tradition was sacred. Every summer, they returned to Blind Frog Ranch, a sun-seared spread of land tucked in eastern Utah, where myths clung to the rocks like lichen. The land had belonged to their ancestors for over a century, and each generation inherited not just the soil, but its secrets. And with those secrets came the annual treasure hunt. It was always the highlight of the season. Hand-drawn maps, riddles carved into tree bark, fake artifacts buried near riverbeds. It was Trevor Olinger who had kept the tradition alive after his father passed. He'd involve his two children, Drew and Brenna, in planning some years, while other years he spun the entire mystery himself. His wife, Lane, acted as judge and final puzzle master. It was harmless fun, or so it had always been. Until this summer everything began with a discovery. Drew, now 17 and less enchanted with pretend adventures, had been cleaning out the old barn when he found a locked crate wedged beneath a rotting top. The lock had long since rusted, and the lid gave way with effort. Inside lay a weathered journal, a yellowed map wrapped in twine, and several pieces of what appeared to be native stonework. Fragments etched with markings none of them could identify. Trevor, eyes gleaming with nostalgia and curiosity, saw the perfect foundation for this year's treasure hunt. He planned the route around the map Drew had found, using its landmarks instead of drawing up his own. It would be the first authentic hunt in Olinger history. The idea thrilled him, unnerved Lane, and mildly irritated Brenna, would rather have stayed home binge-watching documentaries about real explorers instead of pretending to be one. They set out the following morning, packs loaded, sunscreen thick on their necks, laughter still easy between them. The map led them toward the lesser-known northern edge of the ranch, an area rarely explored. This part of the property was harsher, its canyons steeper, its trees darker, older. The landscape shifted strangely here, the light slanting in odd directions, the wind almost musical as it passed through the rock hollows. The clues hidden on the map weren't like the usual riddles Trevor wrote. These were cryptic, geometric symbols paired with strange coordinates and odd markings. Brenner noted the repeating pattern of triangles pointing toward a circle. Drew matched the formation with one of the petroglyph-covered rocks they'd passed on their route. The symbols matched exactly, down to the smallest stroke. Midway through the second day, they found the first object buried in a shallow stone basin, a metallic shard, blackened and cold, heavier than it should have been. The air around it buzzed faintly, as though static clung to its surface. Lyon, uneasy since the start, suggested they turn back. Trevor insisted it was part of the game. He rationalized the find as some leftover mining scrap, perhaps from an undocumented shaft.